we're looking to.
We welcome everyone. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walked this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. I call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for May 12th, 2026. Committee, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Administration, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No changes.
What about Staff Sergeant Hall?
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Yes. Yeah, that one, we can cross that one off. 5.1, that will be pushed to the next meeting.
Don't mess with that new chairman.
He's on it.
Okay. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll move the meeting. Yeah, I'll move the meeting and adopt the committee of the whole agenda for May 12th, 2026 as amended.
Okay, so there is adoption of the agenda. The committee adopt the agenda as amended. Please vote.
I'm in favor.
Okay. Okay, council, I understand we do have Curtis Anderson here. I'm just going to read the information on the minute with council. Minute with council provides an opportunity where residents can address council regarding issues, events, celebration, or concerns. To ensure a constructive and welcoming environment, please adhere to the following guidelines. Keep your remarks concise, address the chair of the meeting when speaking to council. Avoid asking questions as it's not a Q&A session, and maintain a respectful tone and language. Curtis, thank you for being here, and please proceed.
Okay, you want me to sit?
Sure.
Okay, good afternoon, council. For those who don't know me, my name is Curtis Anderson. I'm a local realtor with RE/MAX, and I'm also a licensed short-term rental property manager here in Hinton. I want to speak today about the proposed reduction to the STR cap, particularly around the two reasons being cited most often: complaints and housing affordability. For starters, Airbnbs are required to pay the Alberta tourism levy, and this is not optional. I have personally reached out to our local DMO for my listings and have been left with no response. It is my intention to reach out again. First, complaints. The main concerns I continue to hear are parking and noise, but these are not issues unique to short-term rentals. They exist in residential neighborhoods regardless of whether the home is owner-occupied, long-term rented, or an STR. The difference is STRs already have rules in place. Our bylaws clearly state parking requirements. It also limits guest occupancy. Hosts are required to appoint a local manager. In my client's case, that is me. I've hosted hundreds of stays and have never received a single complaint or bylaw call. So my question, I'm not supposed to ask a question. If the issue is rule breaking, why are the rules not being enforced? What are the stats on the amount of complaints being made to bylaw around STRs, and how many complaints were addressed? In the same time frame, how many similar complaints were made around non-STRs? If homes do not have enough parking, enforce the parking rules. If guests are causing noise disturbances, enforce the noise bylaws. If operators are overcrowding homes or violating license conditions, penalize those operators. But punishing responsible local businesses because enforcement is lacking is the wrong approach. I also believe there should be stronger compliance checks. If the town is concerned with operators following the rules, why not periodically review listings to ensure properties are compliant? Second, housing affordability. I think we need to be honest about what reducing the STR cap would actually accomplish. The new cap remains above the current number of STRs. Nothing changes, no housing returns to the market. If the cap is reduced below the current number of licensed STRs, the message is very clear. Hinton becomes less welcoming to investment and economic growth. I see no point in reducing the cap. Trends change and we see an influx in STRs causing a real issue. What were the cap then? The reality is most STR properties are not what we would traditionally call affordable housing. Many homes that became STRs sat on the market for an extended period of time. We still have homes in the 200 and 300,000 range sitting for sale today. As realtors, we are not selling a lot of homes as STRs. The issue is not simply a lack of inventory. What Hinton truly needs is purpose-built affordable housing and rentals, not restrictions that discourage investment. From a homeowner perspective, this discussion also raises concerns about property value. For many residents, their home is their largest investment. Policies designed to reduce home values should concern every homeowner in this community. We all know Hinton needs growth. We need investment, jobs, tourism, and a stronger tax base, especially with rising costs and future infrastructure demands. The study, paid for by taxpayers, says we are doing a great job with our current rules. We have the highest licensing fees, the second highest fines behind Canmore. This sounds like we wasted money for a pat on the back. I'm asking council to focus on enforcement of the existing rules rather than adding more restrictions that impact responsible operators, local jobs, tourism, and investor confidence. Let's address the real issues directly, enforce bylaws we already have, and support appropriate housing development. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of our other guests like to do admin to council? No. Okay, so we'll go on to for delegations, 4.1, Alberta Hotel Lodging Association presentation presented by Tracy Douglas Lowers, President and CEO, and Lori Chandler, Vice President, Public Affairs. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Council, for the opportunity to address you here today. The HLA's membership includes 19 hotels in Hinton, which comprise 88% of your 1,239 hotel guest rooms. I want to be really clear that hotels do not oppose responsible home sharing. Home sharing can support tourism and allow residents to earn additional income. Hotels compete every day. As Hinton looks to expand its visitor economy, what we're asking for is a modern, common sense framework, a framework that protects housing, supports neighborhood livability, safety, and enforceability, and creates a level playing field for all accommodation providers in Hinton. The town of Hinton has already taken important steps on short-term rentals. Licensing and a cap on non-principal residents, short-term rentals are a strong starting point. However, the market is changing quickly, and council should consider whether the current framework, even with tighter caps on non-primary SCRs, will be adequate for the future. According to AirDNA, there are about 84 active short-term rental listings in Hinton. Listings have grown by roughly 35% year over year, and 94% of those are entire home listings, not a spare bedroom or occasional home share. That 94% points to the core issue. When almost all listings are entire homes, the question is not simply how many listings exist today, but what kind of short-term rental activity does Hinton want in the future? A cap manages the number of units. A principal residence requirement protects housing. Without a principal residence requirement, investors and speculators, real estate bootleggers, as they often call themselves, can buy and rent as many homes as they can finance until the cap is reached. You don't need me to come from Edmonton to tell you that removing even a small number of homes from Hinton's long-term market creates real pressure. Heightens housing supply for local families and workers. It compounds workforce pressures for employers already struggling to house their staff. It creates nuisance, disruption, noise, and enforcement pressure in residential neighborhoods where there is no on-site host. As commercial short-term rentals increase, municipalities can face more complaints, inspections, enforcements, and public safety demands, all of which you have to fund. In some communities, our members and policing partners have also raised concerns about human trafficking in properties where there is no on-site supervision. Clear rules and platform accountability make the system more practical to enforce. It would be easy to think that the current listing count shows that the rules are working. However, that conclusion can be misleading for two reasons. First, a cap limits units, but it doesn't prevent investor-driven whole home conversions, which cannibalize and commoditize your housing stock and drive up rents and house prices. Without a principal residence requirement, dedicated short-term rentals can still fill that cap. Second, there's still room for the market to grow. If the cap remains above the current number of listings, the market can continue expanding until the cap is reached. If council believes that non-principal residence short-term rentals need to be capped, why consider exemptions that weaken that objective? Exemptions create confusion and loopholes, complicate enforcement, and can encourage housing to be built or converted for tourist use rather than local residents. If new builds are exempted, the cap is effectively removed and new units may be used as year-round short-term rentals, ghost hotels, instead of the housing that development permits actually meant to approve. If developers are receiving municipal permits to build housing, is it not incumbent on the town of Hinton to ensure that what they build is in fact used for the intended purpose of housing? The principle is straightforward. If a whole home, whether it is a condo or a single-family residential, is operated as a full-time short-term rental, it is not available to house residents. Principal residence rules help to address that problem. 2024 research conducted by McGill University found that rents were approximately $50 lower per month in areas with a principal residence requirement, a difference of roughly 3.3%. That same study also found that once a principal residence requirement was introduced, in Vancouver, about 800 homes were immediately returned to the long-term market, and about 4,000 homes in Toronto. And that's before BC implemented their province-wide short-term rental framework. In a smaller community, even a modest number of returned homes can make a meaningful difference. This issue is not about hotels avoiding competition. Hinton hotels already compete in a stable and competitive market. In 2025, hotel occupancy in Hinton was 55.5%, same in 2024, and 52% in 2023. Hotels pay non-residential taxes and operate under strict rules while competing for guests. What we're asking for is a level playing field where all accommodation providers operate under comparable tax and safety rules. If a visitor stays in hotels, that revenue is generated by commercially taxed assets. If they stay in a short-term rental, that same economic activity is generated by residentially taxed assets. The proposed approach limits growth but maintains that tax gap, and exemptions for new builds would only exacerbate it. A principal residence requirement shifts activity back into the commercial system where taxation aligns with usage, increasing your municipal assessment base. From a tax perspective, the key issue isn't the number of units, it's the classification of economic activity. When commercial scale short-term rentals operate in residential areas, the town takes on more complaints, inspections, enforcement, and public safety demands. And I doubt that your licensing fee and development permit costs actually cover those off on an annual basis. But the activity is occurring in residentially taxed properties. So over time, the town sees increased demand on services with no corresponding increase in your revenues. This is not a choice between tourism and housing. It's a choice about what kind of tourism system Hinton wants to support, creating a policy not just for today, but for the future. The HLA's recommendation is straightforward. Implement a principal residence requirement, so short-term rentals are limited to a host primary home. Require platforms like Vrbo and Airbnb to comply with local rules, including verifying a valid license number before a listing goes live. And require them to share their data and permit you to audit their information so that the town can identify non-compliant listings and enforce the bylaw effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay, Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, so July 2025, which is a pretty peak season for us, Hinton was 25% higher than somewhere like Sylvan Lake already, so $265 a night on average to come visit our community. In your experience, if STRs are removed from the market, how does that impact the cost of hotel stays?
It's a supply and demand business, the same as it is for short-term rentals that would be operating. So you know, when rates go up in the summertime, hotels and short-term rentals are benefiting from that compression and additional demand. So, you know, it's no different than going to the Calgary Stampede. So peak period, rates go up.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay,
Go.
oh,
Um,
Councilor Charlton.
so I think, a lot of what you had to say made a lot of sense. because I am a frequent Airbnb user myself when I travel, I just recognize the value in being able to offer a different type of accommodation to a family that might be visiting a community in those peak months where they need kitchen facilities, maybe rooms where they can accommodate, if it's a larger family, to accommodate that whole family. I mean, I not necessarily was traveling with the family, but traveled with other groups of people where I've seen huge value in being able to kind of reside in the Airbnb later in the evening and just visit those sorts of things. So, I mean, I do think there needs to be a balance in a community to be able to offer still that type of accommodation to that type of traveler. So just kind of making that point more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tracy said it right up front, like hotels are not afraid of competition, and a principal residence requirement doesn't actually remove short-term rentals from your market or limit that choice and type of stay for any type of tourist. What it does is limit it to the person who owns that home. They can do whatever they want with it. They can rent a room, they can rent a garden suite, they can rent their basement, they can rent their entire home when they're not there. If they choose to do so, that is their private property. A principal residence requirement removes the commercial speculators who come into the market and buy up entire homes, entire condominium buildings, and rent them out on a nightly basis like a ghost hotel. We don't follow the same rules or same taxation requirements.
Councilor Nelson?
I'm okay. I'm just-
Okay. Councilor McLean?
Yeah, you sent us the template there for that bylaw. Is there any municipalities that you know off the top of your head that took that template and enforced it or passed it?
This template we actually just developed. So, and it is based on, you know, the MGA and sort of conventions of formatting bylaws in Alberta. So this is the first time that we've shared it with a municipality, but we have had conversations with other communities, like Woodminster, Sylvan Lake, about comparable. So it's a template that we would share with any community that was contemplating putting legislation around.
Anyone else? I have one question. There was a couple of references to Alberta's lack of meaningful STR regulation. Can you explain that? I'm assuming you're comparing it to other provinces.
So British Columbia is a really good example. 3 years ago, they implemented comprehensive legislation around short-term rentals with the three recommendations that we've been talking to councils and to the government of Alberta about the principal residence requirement. And in BC, that is a province-wide requirement with some specific room for exemptions in high tourist traffic communities. The platform accountability, so requiring platforms like Airbnb and VRBO to ensure that every host who wants to list properties on their platform ensures that they are compliant with local legislation, so that they have if they are required to have a license number, that it is a legitimate license number, and that if they list hosts that do not comply, then the platform would actually have some accountability for that non-compliant activity. And then the last one is the requirement for data sharing. And for example, Airbnb in Edmonton has said that they would agree to ensure that hosts were licensing and that they were willing to share certain information with the municipality, but it's not a legislated requirement. It was simply an agreement, which, you know, when all partners are of good faith and working well together is great. But as you know, legislation isn't written for when everything is running smooth and effectively. It's written to provide boundaries and mandatory requirements. So we really feel that just as hotels have mandatory obligations that we need to fulfill, those other accommodation providers that are newer into the space should similarly have regulatory obligations that they also need to fulfill.
Thank you. Anyone else have any more questions? Okay, thank you, Tracy and Lori, for that presentation. You're welcome to stay if you want.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is reports from administration, town of Hinton advocacy document.
Thank you, Chair, through to the rest of the committee. So I don't think I have to, go through this in any great amount of detail, but as a part of our 2026 to 2030 tactical plan, one of the items is to update and maintain the advocacy document as a living document with a formal annual review, and that's what we're doing today.
Mayor March.
I would like, I want things to keep coming back. And I think the potential for this whole moratorium discussion coming up in 2030. But I would like to have a conversation with our operator first. I've been trying to line that up to get council out to have that conversation with them, but what I don't want to do is step on their toes, so. I don't know, I put it to the rest of council, I think it's a big issue for the community. And I would like to maybe make a motion that we bring this forward to a future committee of the whole meeting, only because I would really like to have a conversation with Sergey before we put it in there. And if we're gonna put together a book of what we're gonna officially advocate for, I think it should be part of it.
Thank you. I just want to add one thing. The chart that's on page 29 of 88. It's the town of Hinton, within Yellowhead County boundaries, and it shows the scene calls for that airport. Sort of losing my tracker. The helipad at Hinton Hospital, that one in there is dated, I think it's up to 2022. Yeah, is it possible to get current stats if we're going to move this forward to another meeting? And maybe they don't have it, I don't know.
Yeah, through the chair, we certainly can. If this is, I would say, if this is something that council wants to continue to advocate on, we'll have to update that.
Okay.
I believe that we approved this in 23 for last year's stats in 22, but these are STARS statistics, and they keep a pretty updated copy of all of those that they usually present on an annual basis.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councilor Nelson.
This isn't a specific 2026, it's just our current advocacy document, so I also wouldn't have an issue with us going through it, updating it, and then we might have a goal thing, we might have there may be other things that emerge throughout the year that we add to it. Like, to me, this is should be a relatively living document. Once we get through April or May, there might be communities, there might be some other stuff that we want to add to it, so I'm good either way. I agree that that we
Just
need to be
issues
there.
keep coming back and back and back to this meeting, and so.
I'm happy either way. I'll support waiting, I'll support approving it now if it makes any difference, but not attached to.
Okay, well, I made the motion that we bring it forward to the future, so what do people want to do?
Everybody else, some real comments? Okay. Okay, so there's a motion that committee return the advocacy document to a future committee of the whole meeting. Please vote. Next item, 6.2, short-term rentals bylaw number 1162. Administration.
Chair, this one will go to Mr. McLaughlin.
Good afternoon, committee. Before you today is re-looking at our short-term rentals bylaw number 1162. This is the first time this council is seeing this topic since no, it's not the first. It's the second time you're seeing re-election, but it formed part of our strategic plan and tactical plan to bring it back to council to have another discussion and look to see if council wanted to make any changes. As part of this document, we listed five items that you may want to talk tonight about and give administration direction on whether or not you want to make any changes to the bylaw and have us bring anything forward. So with that, we had the license issue on a first come, first served basis for complete application. So the thought around that one is, you know, how do we want to handle if we're approaching the cap? If you have a cap that is approaching being there, you know, how do we want to handle you know, on what basis do we put them in line? Those types of things. Inclusion of a statutory wait list with regulations. So if we are maintaining a wait list, what are the rules around that? I don't expect you to give us a lot of direction on that tonight, but just know that, you know, if we are going to develop a rate list, that prompts a lot of questions. We've got to bring suggestions forward with it. There's a lot of conversation about how do you run that list. And then 3, the non-transferability of license by operator or property ownership. We want to make sure that licenses aren't being bought or sold or going with properties, those sort of things. So we want you to consider that if you are issuing a license, that the license is removed if the property changes hands, so that it doesn't flow with the property or stay with the, you don't want a property owner to be able to move it to another house, and you don't want it to sell with the house. You want it, they have to give up the license and get in line with whatever waiting list you establish. We are suggesting a cap of 61 based on some of the thoughts that we thought we heard from council. So, you know, we're just putting, if that was just a number we're throwing forward to basically start the discussion so that. And then the last one was we have had the question, as well as we thought that, you know, if someone is looking to do a long-term rental, one of the reasons council discussed limiting it is because it is taking up housing stock. But if someone wants to come to town and build a house specifically for that purpose, do we want to allow that? That's a question council should ask themselves and decide if they want to include that in the regulations or not. And with that, we'll take any questions. I have our municipal planner as well as our development person here tonight to help with any questions you might have.
Council Charlton.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know, out of the non-residential short-term rentals that in the list provided that you can see out of the 54, how many of those happened or were approved in the last 12 months or less? It doesn't have to be specific.
Good question. Thank you, Chair, through to committee. I might actually revert this back to our intake of all these applications. Miss Vanessa, she's our planning and development coordinator.
I
Would you
have the list on my computer, but I don't know it off the top.
Yeah.
Would you entertain a guess that the number is a lot or just a few? That's kind of where I'm going.
So from 12 months from now, so since last May.
maybe around 14 or so, do you think?
Yeah, let's say that.
Yeah, it might have been around.
I
14.
can't say for sure.
Yeah.
I do have it on my desktop, though. I make sure and mark the year, but I don't know what.
Thank you.
Councilor Nelson?
Sorry, just
Oh.
one piece of clarification, because I don't know, and all, this may be a question for planning as well, but I don't know if we're looking at a natural growth rate of about 14, 15 a year. I think that, you know, backing up 12 months from now, we have initiated this bylaw. We are still getting some non-principals back into compliance, correct? Or is that a natural growth from year to year?
I'm trying to understand,
Because
you're asking.
Well, I believe it was around last year, maybe 2 years ago, but it took us a while to get all of the non-compliance, non-principal residents back into compliance.
Correct.
And we were doing a lot of catch up from before where we had a very poor compliance rate for those. So, you know, are all the 14 new ones that would have started within a 12-month period, or is that some catch up from all of the non-compliant ones now
Could have
coming
been a
into
few.
compliance?
Could have been a few catch-ups.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say a few catch-ups as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was an important
that's
piece of
fine.
clarification, because I don't believe that we're looking at a natural growth rate of short-term rentals coming at 14, 15 year over year.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I think my question or comment or clarification is in the same vein. So in the consultant's report, April of 2025, so just over a year ago, the total number was 54. And as of Friday, when this report came out, it was also 54 with 3 applications. To me, if those numbers are relatively accurate, I think it's showing that the general short-term rental system is kind of, the market is kind of taking care of itself. I'm sure there's some that have had a really good experience and probably others that say, you know, this probably isn't for me. I would rather have a long-term person. And to me, with that information, I really, it worries me to start updating bylaws, changing bylaws that haven't necessarily been a problem, especially if the market is kind of looks to be very much normalizing, with the exact same amount now as there was a year ago. So yeah, I'm actually encouraged by seeing that it's the exact same number, a year later. It's not growing, it's not taking more residences, so thank you.
Mayor Labarge?
Why the recommendation for licenses not to be transferable? I mean, I guess if it comes down to a house count, why do you care what, you know, where it's at? If an investor's maybe paid a premium because it's a short-term rental or, there's the opportunity to, I mean, I guess if you're allowing it, you're turning a house into an investment. So I'm curious why that would be,
Through the chair, I can answer that one. That was our recommendation because I guess the thought or the loophole that creates by allowing them to be transferable is you can monetize the license. So this comes out, you can go in and you can get a license, and if you hit the cap and it just becomes at a premium, and you can utilize the fact that you have a license to be able to sell it for a higher amount. Right, versus the people who have been waiting and have come in, you know, should they get the first dibs at the license? And just due to monetizing the license, and we thought that we would get more applications than we naturally would if they knew that that license could potentially become more valuable when they sell their home.
so we want to be egalitarian.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. So on page 81 of 88, Councilor Nelson, was that what you were talking about where it was 54, the number?
Like a 23 and a
Yeah.
31 or something.
Well, 31 and 23.
Yeah.
I'm just, for administration, That 23, is that like a list of houses that do not have a license? In JD1?
On April 14th, address and Upton ground is not listed on Hinton website. So what that means here is the software company identified these, however, our website didn't reflect that those were listed. Now, there is a bit of a lag in between when Granicus provides the information to us, and then when we update them. So there could have been some of that here. There could have been also some people that have given up their licenses. We at renewal time, we'll have a few that say, I'm not renewing this year. So that's part of why it's not maybe growing so much, because you're having that turnaround, that turnover. But yes, that is what that means here, is that these were identified on Granicus, however, they weren't listed on our Town of Hinton website as of yet. So that meant that we hadn't received any applications for them.
Okay, so I guess my point is when Councillor Nelson is saying it was 54 in 2005, it's 54 now, is that accurate, or was it 31? compared to 54?
Through the chair, 31 compliant,
Yeah.
at that time, but the
But they-
total number was probably closer to the 23, but
So
again,
we've got them-
give or take with the lag. Some of them might have been in process, but not listed on our website as well, so.
So presumably those are all listed on our website now.
Yeah. And so these would have been some of those non-compliant ones that we did an influx, a blitz, I guess you'd say, an enforcement blitz on when we initially started this bylaw.
What other questions? Okay. Councillor Charlton and then Mayor Rivera.
Administration, any thought to maximum of non-residential short-term rentals per neighborhood? Like I noticed in some cases there would be, say, 2 or 3 of them in Bradwell, and then, maybe a little bit more on Woodley. At one point, there was a few there. I mean, if the intent is to free up housing and maybe mitigate some of the noise and parking, would it make sense to limit per neighborhood?
Through the chair, we
Wants to
have
go,
considered that. I believe it is included in the Vistec report,
As an option.
or as a potential option, but the short answer is you can do that. There are communities who do that. We found that more specific planning regulations were common in very large cities, not very common in towns our size. Where you could look at maybe specific zonings or spacing requirements or things like that. Again, what we found is those types of planning regulations, again, we're just a little bit more common in cities with a little bit more complex systems. You can certainly do that here in Hinton, where you could look at, only so much, so many units per block or per street, or you have to be within a certain distance. I don't remember the conversation, but I remember that part of the reason that I think we stayed away from it is, you may be at a disadvantage if somebody gets a license and you may not necessarily realize that, and now you are limited in the options that you have as a homeowner because, your neighbor or the guy next to you might have done something, right? And, to balance. Yeah.
But would that not be the same thing as having a cap that's already reached its cap?
Yeah, it's just regular, how granular do we want to regulate it, correct?
I can see that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
through the chair to committee, could we do that? Yes, but it would be difficult to enforce. Your communication would have to be absolutely superb, because if you have someone who's trying to buy and close on a house with the purpose of doing this, and they look at our website and say, oh, yeah, there's room in that neighborhood, but then by the time it closes, oh, no, another one popped up, now I'm not allowed, and I've bought this house with the purpose of doing that, and it just,
But again, could that same situation not be an issue when you're close to the cap? Are we communicating with our local realtors to let them know that those cap tops are getting close? And what is the way of communicating with them? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Mayor Barge?
So I'll state my predisposition on this thing and then I'll make my comment, but I must say that the one thing that keeps getting left out of this, we talk about stats and. I mean, if it's one guy that gets kept up late, he's gotta go to work the next morning because people next door on vacation. He had a reasonable expectation when he bought his house, that there wasn't gonna be a 24-hour business next door. And when I look at short-term rentals, it does impact the neighborhood and it impacts a whole bunch of people that aren't party to the transaction. And I don't know, what impact it would have on a home if you sat in the middle of 3 or 4 short-term rentals. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that come in to this from a neighborhood perspective. But I guess as far as the discussion of numbers and stuff, like if our cap was 170 and they were all $600,000 houses, I don't care, frankly. And the problem for me is I take a look through the list of properties, and of the 54, there's 29 properties that are in a neighborhood that I would say is where all the starter homes are. So more than half of them are in neighborhoods where we have a housing problem. So maybe one of the things we want to consider is, I don't know, maybe it's gotta be RS1 to qualify as a, but maybe, how do we protect that housing stock? Bradwell, there's a lot of houses on Bradwell. The fact of it is that housing stock is not gonna get replaced. The developers aren't gonna come in and build Bradwell type housing here for a while. So my problem or concern with this thing is how do you make sure you have entry level housing for people to come into? That's the challenge. And those neighborhoods had entry level housing, but they also had rentals in there. And so if you take, and I know it's quoted in here that 2.2 of the 2.2% of the housing stock's tied up in this, but what percentage of entry level neighborhood housing is tied up in this? I don't know. You turn 29 houses back into that market, I think it makes a significant difference. So, I mean, from my perspective, what I puzzle through is how do we target a little bit? And, you know, I've had conversations and it seems to be that, you know, a lot of realtors are saying, well, no, these guys are coming in, platonically speaking, investors are coming in and they want a higher priced home. I mean, from my perspective, I think, great, that's the market I'd like to see move and to leave these entry level houses and townhouses alone, so. As I look at it, that would be something I would be interested to talk about. And maybe prior to setting an absolute cap, we want to talk about some of the rules around it, because that might impact people's feelings as it relates to what the cap should be.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I'll speak to a couple things. I think that's the issue with why this keeps coming around. You know, the previous council picked a random arbitrary number as a cap because they had to find something just to land on. And to me, it's something, if you're gonna get it right, it needs to be tied to vacancy, it needs to be tied to inflate, you have to have numbers that are very complex and probably more complex than our real estate system is. You know, if you're talking about Vancouver, Toronto, there's a lot of, there's enough volume there to have that data make a lot of sense. But to me, a lot of it is gonna take care of itself. If there's a whole bunch of them on Trestle, they're probably gonna find out there's only so many people that are going to pay the Airbnb or short-term rental cost for a 7-bedroom, 5-bathroom house, and someone else will drop off because it wasn't as lucrative as they were going, because there's too much supply, and I think the neighborhoods will largely sort them out themselves, because there's only so much demand, and I think in Hinton, like, we're thinking about these whole house rentals as, you know, partiers and all this stuff, and in my experience, we have two that I can see from our house. It's families going to the ski hill, it's families that have one person coming from Edmonton, one coming from Grand Prairie, and one coming to Kamloops, and with Hinton being a place that people like to go, but also in the middle of a lot of things, to me, it's the people that I see using it, it's families looking to spend, you know, get together for a 75th birthday party, and a hotel covers a lot of things, but you can't sit around a hotel and play rummy all night with your family that you're going to see once every 2 years, and to me, it's a very different customer than the hotel customers, and I think there's like, it's not growing, right? There's some that are fading off and some that are joining, and until we have some sort of data that it's growing, I don't know how much we want to try to figure out how to control it and how to solve the problems. The enforcement's been okay, the bylaw's pretty good, like we've done a good job at it, and to me, it's kind of working. And if it starts growing like crazy and somebody said, then but I also don't know if there's the demand for that. Same reason there's not a new hotel being built every 2 weeks is the, you know, 55% vacancy only pays for enough different hotels, and if it got to 75%, then there'd probably be another hotel or two being built. So to me, I actually think it's working decently well, as long as those numbers don't start growing substantially. So thank you.
Councilor McLean?
Yeah, well, I had a lot to say about this in previous, I think when we were doing the strategic plan and the tactical plan. But sitting here listening to the conversation going on, I agree with Mayor Large on the type of homes that we're targeting. I fall back on the population and housing report that we did, where there is a need for senior housing to move into type of housing and have these starter homes available, right? If we allow the number continue increase of these starter homes to be bought up and turned into short-term rentals, then we are creating a problem. We're amplifying the problem in this community, right? I had the same questions and concerns around numbers on streets and zoning. I'll just use it as an example, like above the old grind, there's a shop up there. If they turned that to an Airbnb, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but then talking to some other people about the distance from populations from other neighborhoods and creating a problem there. So maybe that's something we can look at. But my overall view of it is that we can change the number and we can bring it down to whatever is recommended here, 61 by the administration. And if we are able down the road to secure some investment and development for the senior population and free up some more of these entry-level homes that are so greatly needed here, then we'd be able to go back and review it in a few years, or a new council in 3 years, and up that number, right? Going through the 5, I didn't have a problem, first come, first served, but basically didn't have a problem with the 61, had a problem with the transferable. People are investing into it. They're changing, some of them are changing their homes from a typical 3-bedroom to a 6-bedroom thing, short-term rental. So to get their investment back, they probably should be able to transfer that license with the property. The person doesn't take it, the property takes it. And, the exemption for new builds, I did have a problem at first, with that. I'm still kind of on the fence with that one. But, overall, I'd like to see consensus sometime this evening, reducing the number to 61. And then maybe giving some instruction to administration to go out and with the bylaw officer and everything else, gather some more sound information on, exactly, do we have bylaw officers in the evening? Do we have bylaw officers responding to the number of calls that we've seen, for garbage, for, parking, for, noise? And, those 6 or 8 tickets, I forget what it was on the report, were they for noise, were they for, parking, whatever, or were they just not compliance? Okay, and, you know, let's gather that maybe in third, fourth quarter of this year, we come back and see if we need to change the bylaw for that, but right now, I'd be happy to support summer moving that the cap go down and then move forward from there.
Council Charlton?
I just want to come back to the maximum numbers per neighborhood and just maybe to kind of make a comment on something that you had said earlier, Marilyn Barge, about the intent making, the intent is to make affordable housing for the residents of Hinton. So if there's targeted areas of affordable neighborhoods where there is maximum numbers that can be maybe allowed in those areas. Just wondering, when we get close to that number, suggested by Councillor McLean of 61, but yet it's council's intent to look at creating some further development for housing in Hinton. What happens to the developer that is now selling the houses in those areas that have recently been developed? Will they be restricted if we are close to that cap of 61? Or do we, if we're not, are they dictated to as to what they can sell or not sell? If speculatively, if you were to bring a developer into Hinton that developed an area, I'm not sure if it's going to be affordable housing or even what the number is on affordable housing, but would they be restricted as to who their customer is that they could sell to?
You're asking me?
Well,
No.
I'm asking the question, is that something that we could run into trouble on if it's close to that number? If we're looking at promoting development.
Well, I guess, I mean, from my perspective, yeah, if he's building, because he wants to sell it as a short-term rental and we're close to the cap, then that's a dumb thing to do. So you shouldn't do that. I don't know. Again, I would like to put legislation or regulation in place and leave the market go to work.
Barge?
I guess the only thing for me is it's way easier to bump the number up than it is to drag it back. I think mathematically that's a concept, but I'm not gonna make the motion on the 61 because I'm curious, do people think it? Does the rest of the committee think there's any relevance to maybe getting future licenses out of those high density neighborhoods that are by the nature of their design cheaper?
Thank you. The one thing I was going to mention is, if you wanna assign a easily or an easy number, you'd probably base it off of the assessment value of the home at the time of application. And then you can set the number for, because, but again, I don't think we're talking about more attainable housing, not affordable housing, right? Because I don't think that true affordable housing by their definition is we're able to have short-term rentals in it, but we're talking about the, you know, not that $800,000 new builds, right? We're talking about something that is more attainable for a larger percentage of the population, and we can assign that through your assessment value as a way of regulating it. I think it'd be easier than looking at planning regulations or trying to, you know, essentially prescribe zones that we believe are more affordable, because there's also variations in lots of these areas.
Can I just follow up on that? So if it was an SR1, so bigger lots, more parking, there's land, I mean, is that a potential? It'd be easy to manage that, would it not?
If we want to manage it that way, where we're essentially allowing non-principal short-term rentals only in certain zonings, we could certainly do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have Councilor McLean and Councilor Nelson and then myself.
To Randall Valley's point there, in one of those reports that we reviewed, there is some communities that do that, right? Where only allow short-term rentals in certain zoning areas, right? And that's why I was referring to the commercial aspect of it, but there are other ones where different zones are where short-term rentals are allowed, some that are, right? The other thing is to the number. I just don't want a big influx of if we pass the number tonight, would that number be the number, right? Or could someone come in tomorrow and say, well, the bylaw hasn't been passed, I want to put another 6 of them in, right? Just and then our number goes beyond what we're thinking, right?
Through the chair, members of the committee, nothing that we decide on today is going to be official. Really, the direction is to bring forward a bylaw with these regulations included, and then we need to go through all 3 readings for it to become in place. So,
Follow up. So whatever number, and I hopefully will agree to a number tonight, I would like to see it. No, I would like to see it come back to regular council meeting and be done with it. But next council meeting, next regular council meeting, right? So.
Councilor Nelson?
A couple different follow-ups, so parking is already part of the bylaw. So if you don't have enough parking, regardless of the size of your house, the size of your lot, you can't have a short-term rental. So some of these higher density areas can't have them already because of parking. To say this type of house doesn't get it, or this assessment, so if you say nothing under 300,000, pushes all those to 400,000, now you get those 29 houses now are in the 350 to 450 range, and you own a $300,000 house. Now you can't go out of your $300,000 house into a $400,000 house because those are all short-term rentals, and you're basically creating a gap of that continuum that keeps people moving through that housing spectrum. Like, I think everything we try to do to regulate this is just gonna move a problem to a different place. And as far as passing it quickly, I would challenge, a couple minutes ago, we were talking about like, let's come to a consensus tonight, then we work with bylaw, send bylaw out, bring more information back. That's a lot different than let's pass it as fast as we can next regular council meeting. To me, I just want to understand what problem we're trying to solve and how a cap or excessive regulation will not just move that problem around, especially when it's not growing currently.
Hey, I'm next. I agree with Councilor McLean. I think the 61 is a good start. I also believe that we can always decrease the number. We can always increase the number, sorry. Although I don't agree with the transferability of licenses, I believe that I don't think that they should be transferred with the home, and the comment that was made about somebody maybe renovating a home for the short-term rental. I think they're still going to get a premium for that home based on the renovation. But to leave that license with the home, then you're increasing it even more, and the whole purpose here is to have housing available for people. And to Councillor Nelson's point about having a couple of homes around his place, and there's no issues, that's very likely. But all we've heard, or when we were campaigning, and since then, is people complaining that they just do not want short-term rentals in their neighborhood, and I think we have to remember that. We want to do something that is for the majority of residents of Hinton, and I think that is reducing the short-term rentals. Yeah, Councillor McLean.
Bottom line is, neighborhoods were never designed for short-term rentals or small businesses. Period, right? And over the years, the small businesses and short-term rentals are creeping into neighborhoods and causing a couple concerns. One, as Councillor Dunn said, the complaints and the crowding on the streets of parking and vacationers in the backyard in the hot tub that we all heard when we were out there campaigning. And the second one was the creation, as we discussed here, about the entry level homes and them getting eaten up, right? So let's be honest with ourselves, right? Identify that, right? And I agree with Councillor Gunn. Let's do something for the majority of the citizens and that bought homes in neighborhoods with the expectation of a quiet neighborhood to raise a young family and move forward, and not have a group of short-term rentals where you have different people every night staying in that short-term rental. And hey, we all know, we all use short-term rentals, and from time to time, right? So I just think that we need to come to some consensus on a number and then move forward.
Councillor Nelson.
So hearing what's been said, I'm then very curious why we're only, like, why is it non-principal? You know, if you move into a neighborhood and 3 or 4 neighbors build basement suites and are increasing that density, people, it's a short-term principal. It's easy to target the non-principal because it's people that typically aren't either residents of Hinton or it's an investment, but it's also an investment for anybody that has a basement suite, even if it's their principal rental. And that same basement suite that is being used for a short-term rental, even if it's principal, is still housing stock for probably the most entry-level opportunity for somebody to come and live and start building their life in Hinton. So if it's about density, about, you know, moving to a neighborhood expecting the density to not change, then I think we're also not solving the problem by just saying non-principal and saying if it's non-principal, or sorry, if it's principal, they go away for the winter, all winter long, they're good to have it as a short-term rental all winter long, then that's the, like, to me, it's I'm just not sure what we're talking about. Are we talking about just non-principal, or are we talking about principal and non-principal to achieve the things that you guys are talking about affordability, about density, traffic, all of those things, because there's nothing that requires the principal owner to be physically on site when it's being rented out short term. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor McLean and Mayor Labarge.
Yeah, and I don't want to keep going back and forth, but when you got non-principal compared to principal residents, someone resident in town that lives here and is occupying that, right? And they choose to rent out the basement or not, right? A non-principal one, and I point out a few in town that actually shut down during the winter and stay vacant. And no one's in it, and they just short-term it out, and from the long weekend in May to long weekend in October. There's a property there that if someone that resides in Hinton year round wants to, rent it or purchase it, it's not on the market for them, right? And it's not available. Right? So, and going door knocking, as we all done, and just last October, whatever. Principal residence, it's never brought up to me once, absolutely not once, right? It was always the non-principal residents, once ever brought up to me.
Mayor Burge?
I'd like to see consensus to cap the, non-principal short-term rentals at 70. If I could just speak to it, I mean, I hear what Councillor Nelson's saying, but at the end of the day, if there's no desire to sort of. And it's not even affordable housing, because I hate that term, I hate that we keep, I mean, it's just approachable, it's just. Housing that a young family can afford. Because I think we all get confused with this definition all the time, and affordable housing is a different thing than a house or a family buys. And so, if we can't, in my mind, by some type of legislation, protect these neighborhoods, then let's give it some room to grow and breathe. But let's cap it at a number that's reasonable. And you know, I've heard tonight, well, if it really starts to come on us, we can always come back and address it. We can do that on the way up as well, but there's enough room in there, so instead of it, you know, allowing a growth of 6, you know, allow 16 more residences to be part of that deal. So anyhow.
Alright, so we have a motion, but Councilor McLean wants to speak. I'm gonna move first here.
Anyone can speak to the.
Okay, Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I'm not gonna vote against it if this is the motion, but, and I'm not gonna make a friendly amendment if it's gonna be defeated.
Why not? Come on, jump on it.
So we see the 61, we hear the 70, right? You think there'd be any compromise at 65, right?
Does anybody do auctioneering? Is that-
Well, 5 more homes to me is 5 more homes, right? And you look at. So
Okay,
I will.
here's what I do, hang on a second, so I'm gonna rescind my motion.
I would like to seek consensus as we
Point of order.
Oh,
We
okay,
have to vote on that.
Oh, we do.
Okay.
okay. What are we voting on, sorry? Okay.
You know what, I'm gonna leave it stand, I'm gonna leave my motion stand, I spoke too soon.
Can I move a friendly amendment?
No, you can have to put an amendment if you want. And then we vote on the amendment. Given the nature of where this has gone, what I don't wanna do is start chasing our tail. This has happened many times in the past, and so if you wanna make an amendment, let's do that, and we'll vote on that, and then but we gotta move this thing forward, man.
I agree. I will not make an amendment, I'll go to Cindy. Cool, we'll support it.
Councilor Nelson?
So I won't be in support of this, I think we're, I think the bylaw is working. And I think anytime we're just throwing numbers around arbitrarily without really having anything to base them on, whether that's vacancy, whether that's pricing, whether that's, you know, whatever it is. When our decision making isn't anchored in anything other than just we wanna toss a number out there and negotiate a number around, I just don't think it's great governance, so I'll be voting against it, thank you.
Mayor Burge?
Just because. I don't know, the nature of that comment is, I think, in my mind, it is based on something. And it's the fact that 29 of 54 houses exist in neighborhoods that I consider to be, provide to citizens entry-level housing, and I don't. If we can't do it by some sort of a policy as it relates to zoning, then I think by putting a cap in place limits the impact on those neighborhoods, and so I don't, I guess, except that it completely was pulled out of my butt a little bit. I'd just like to move this forward, but at the end of the day, I think that's a real issue. And I think it's something from a planning perspective. I mean, if our businesses are gonna grow, we need to have places where people who work at those businesses can afford to live. And so I don't wanna get into the whole social housing discussion, and I'm a free enterpriser. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but at the end of the day, I think that's an important principle, and so I wanna make that comment for clarity.
Councilor McLean and Councilor Dalton.
Yeah, I just want to echo everybody's comments. I don't think it was any number we use or any decision we're making. We're doing it in haste. I rely on population and housing report. I relied on the report issued about all the other communities and the problems that they incurred and what remedies they took to solve it. So yeah, no, it's not a number just pulled out of the air, and it's not a decision made in haste.
Councilor Charlton.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this because I do agree with Councillor Nelson on a lot of levels where this is working at the moment. It doesn't seem like we've got a lot of housing that's going out of the pool. But I also am very, very concerned that if this motion of the cap of 70 does not pass, that there will be another motion made. So
You don't want another motion.
Okay,
so
seeing no more hands up. There is a motion that committee seek consensus to a cap of 70 non-principal short-term rentals. Please vote. Well, passed 3-2. 3-4-3. Okay,
And for,
okay,
you should note
yes,
who,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Mayor LaBerge, Councilor McLean and myself voted for, and Councilor Nelson and Councilor Charlton voted against. Okay, Councilor McLean.
So clarification. We've heard different things from different sides about the parking, the noise, the garbage and stuff like that. And we've seen the report from administration. We've heard from the developers and we heard from the investors about non-enforcement problems. Is there a willingness for sometime down the road to administrate and bring back that information around, when our bylaw officers do receive a call, how they respond, who does the neighbor phone, right? Do they phone the property manager, or do they phone the RCMP, or do they phone? How does that system work, right? And that, I think that could be something that we could do at a future committee of the whole. If there's anybody.
open this law bylaw up again?
No, no, just want for information.
Oh, for information.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I mean, we can certainly have that discussion. I would say that, you know, primarily the RCMP are not responding to any of these except for noise. We don't have a 24-hour bylaw. 24-hour bylaw enforcement. So for things like noise, if you do have a noise complaint, it's gonna be the RCMP that's typically going to be responding to those types of calls. But anything related to parking, you know, if there is any garbage or, you know, snow removal or things like that, then our bylaw officer would. I know, speaking to our bylaw officers, you know, usually when you look at the, you know, if you get complaints and you're not issuing many tickets, it's usually a good sign that, you know, typically the property managers or who else. Or even whoever might be occupying the short-term rentals, that when you do come in and we ask them to correct it. Usually done, usually tickets are there for repeat offenses and, you know, when the message isn't quite getting through, so. You know, I know in 2026, we issued about 6 tickets, but we don't receive a huge amount, you know, we don't receive a huge amount of calls specific to short-term rentals. And I don't know how accurate the data is on the calls that we get and whether we tie them to short-term rentals, because that's the other thing I'll qualify is because when we go out and respond to something, whether the people are only there for, you know, up to 30 days or there for a year, it doesn't really matter, right? This is you know, it's a noise complaint. So I don't know how accurately we're tracking, you know, when we're going to these calls and whether we're assigning those to short-term rentals. Might be something we can improve upon. But making sure that our officers are aware whether they're short-term rentals or not. I'm not sure how accurate we do that.
Mayor version and myself.
Okay, well, again, to move this along, if this is gonna come back and we're gonna put the new number in it, I think we should address the other recommendations in the report as well. So I'd like to see consensus, that licenses are issued on a first come, first served basis for complete applications. And if I can speak to it, I think it's a good idea.
I just don't, okay, Chris.
I just wanted to ask a question around clarity, just when we receive an application, the person comes in, they submit a complete application, they submit payment. And then they wait for a fire inspection. And sometimes they pass right away, sometimes they have to do improvements and we need to go back and do another fire inspection. So I need to know if you have a person who comes in, has a complete application and they're, but they're not ready for fire inspection. But an hour later, someone comes in, they're now second in line, but they're ready for a fire inspection. Is the fire inspection part of the complete application? Or is it just the first to apply and pay, and then you give them time to do a fire inspection and they're in line? Like, that's the kind of thing that administration does get worried about as we approach having to run a waiting list.
I guess because I put it out there is, I don't care as long as it's simple.
Okay.
I mean, the problem with writing this stuff and having layers of. I don't know, the guy's there, they've got it completed, so he takes him 2 extra weeks to get the fire inspection, I mean. If that's the easiest way to do it, then I think that's how we should do it. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, with the rest of the council, but I don't wanna be playing games with it, it's like, I wanna see this thing go to bed.
Council McLean and then Council Charlton.
And if we got a bylaw in place and we know the rules and regulations on applying, and one of them is to get a fire inspection, then if I come in and I give you my application, but I'm not ready for a fire inspection, then I don't have a completed application. Right? Because those are all the rules. Here's the 10 rules that you need to follow and you put in your application in. And if you only got 9 of them and someone comes in and they're ready for all 10, right, an hour later, then I would figure the guy with 10 that's ready to go gets it. That's just my opinion.
Council Charlton.
Well, my comment was just to address the situation that administration is in. Would it be a reasonable request for a timeline to allow somebody 2 weeks to get a fire inspection? Or is that an unreasonable timeline for somebody to get that approval to go through? Like, is there
through the chair, we certainly can, it's just. Again, we might be getting into a little bit of minutia, just because there's some complications. We may have to take this back and think a little bit more about it, because sometimes the delay is on their end. Oftentimes the delay is on our end, right, when it comes to having the fire chief go out, do the inspection, so. We'll take it back, I think, just a few comments, I think we understand, but we want to give. They come in, they pay, they have the application, and they have a certain period of time that they have to complete, maybe after the fire inspection, to become into compliance. And we'll manage it that way, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of these little, the fine details that we'll need to.
Yeah, I
think
just,
about.
my concern was just that administration needs to have something to be able to work with, to be able to.
And I think I misunderstood. Can I just follow up on that comment? So the, not being ready for a fire inspection, what would that be? I mean, you call the fire department, say, hey, man, I want a fire inspection. Like, what do you need to do to be ready for a fire inspection? Just call them, isn't it?
So the fire department looks at a lot of things. They make sure that the handrails are on, they make sure the smoke detectors work.
But you're talking about passing, I'm talking about being ready the inspection. Is there anything preparatory to be ready for it?
Well, in some cases, depending on when you apply and, let's say the home is under construction. For example, like that might be a situation where you're not gonna be ready for the fire department to come in. Maybe you have, you currently have a long-term tenant in there. And, you come in, you apply, because once your long-term tenant is out, then you wanna, convert it into a short-term rental unit, but you can't come in until that tenant is done, I mean, there's little nuances that we can. But I think, again,
Okay, thank you.
I don't think we need to get into the minutia. I think how the process works, I think we'll just need to. That's something that we need to think a lot about, and then just maybe propose to council for approval.
So back to my motion then, I guess, do you have enough information that we can get some language from you as it relates to that? I mean, it was your recommendation.
We will propose, yeah.
Okay, I have Councilor Nelson and Councilor McLean.
I'm good. I was just gonna say that this is not council work that we're doing
Yeah.
right now, that we're doing administration's work, and we're not good at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I'm not going down the rabbit hole here. Good.
Okay, so we have a motion that committee seek consensus that license issued on a first come, first served basis for complete applications. That sound right? Okay, thanks. Okay, we're gonna have a little modification. Yeah, I think so. So that committee seek consensus that licenses are issued on a first come, first served basis for complete applications. You vote. I think that was passed unanimously. Next item. Unless someone else has anything else to say, before we go on. Councilor Nelson.
I think some clarity on when this is coming back to council is something that we owe to the community, developers, investors, all of those things, because in the same meeting, we've talked about getting a lot more information and then having it come back to regular council after we do a bunch of information gathering, and then we've talked about it. Let's rush this through as fast as we can. To me, we should establish that so that no one is caught off guard. If this is coming next week, that's a pretty quick turnaround for something that makes major impacts on. Well, it could have a lot of implications that we don't even realize yet, so the original motion had no date with it, and I don't know how we. I don't know if it takes another motion or what that looks like, but probably should have the opportunity to communicate with council prior to, the final decision being made. Thank you.
Through the chair, honestly, it's gonna depend on how many motions we make and how many changes we are. We're certainly not in a position where we're gonna be turning this around for next week's regular council for first reading. So, council can make a motion whether they want this to come back to a committee or a council meeting. It doesn't really make a difference to us. It's just how many, if council wants to consider the bylaw in its final form, but again, it'll depend on how many, but I would imagine that if we stop now, the next committee meeting, we probably would be able to come forward with the draft.
Council McLean?
So we only made 2 changes. I'm aware, so far, right? And all the confidence in the world, administration, can make those 2 changes and bring it, maybe not to the next regular council meeting, but the council meeting following that. I don't think it has to go back to the committee of the whole. That's just my opinion.
Mayor Marginal.
Well, no, I think it's important what Councilor Nelson's talking about is to give everybody enough time. And the fact of it is it's not gonna make any difference on this season anyhow, but I think everybody will have some clarity when it's done, but I would like to work through this, so I would like to seek consensus that we would have the inclusion of a statutory wait list with regulations. Now, I don't wanna get into the same chase or tail argument that we had with the last one. Like, if I make that motion, are we gonna be able to get some language around that? That's. Cause I think if we have a bit lower cap rate, we need to be ready for a wait list, so, I seek the consensus of committee that we have the inclusion of a statutory wait list.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, just clarification, don't we have something bylaw now as a wait list?
Administration.
Through the chair, we do have a wait list, but it's very vague on how that wait list is actually managed. So I think the with regulations is the thing we're really talking about is, when the cap was at 130, when we were at 54, to be honest, it wasn't a major consideration of how we managed it because we were so far away from ever hitting that number. But to Mayor Labarge's point, once we're getting a little bit cozier with that cap limit, we need to make sure that we're very clear and those are outlined by bylaw. So that's really what we're talking about is that additional language around how that cap is going to be managed and that wait list.
Councilor Nelson.
And I think I'm now confusing myself. So our licenses are issued on a first come, first served basis. So if we're including that in a bylaw, then the wait list would have to follow the first come, first served basis that we've already agreed upon, from what I understand, unless we're looking at anybody that's on a wait list will be prioritized differently, whether that's by neighborhood or housing type or cost, like unless we're looking to do something other than first come, first serve, I don't understand what the requirement of a statutory wait list with regulations would be.
Administration.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, again, the regulations around a wait list are going to be, again, very the minutia of the detail. Do you make them pay a deposit to get on it, or can I just throw my name on it anytime I want? When you call them, how much time do they have to actually become in compliance and be ready to go? Or, do they have to be able to convert to a short-term rental within 1 month, 6 months? You're getting into just those fine details. But when we're talking about something like this, the fine details do matter because, when procedural fairness with when you're managing people's largest investments, they matter quite a bit. So we need to make sure that we get that part right.
Ms. Walker, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair, through to committee. With that said, yes, I think another thing would be, we would put parameters around if there's a renewal or if there's been a cancellation. then we can monitor, okay, who's next on the list now? We've received, someone sent in, we're not renewing, okay, then we can go to that list. So those sorts of things, but we can certainly put something together for council's review.
Anything else? Okay, so we have. All right, oh, Counselor Nelson.
And this will impact the way I vote on this. The original motion that was made, does it specify whether it's coming to regular council or committee? Or did it just say that we seek consensus that there's a cap? I don't know if I can pull it.
I think it was just the cap. I don't think we mentioned any meeting. Yeah, just the cap.
So if I can speak to it, I'm probably not gonna be in favor of any of the minutia and details if it's going to regular, because I don't believe that is the correct thing, especially because we're trying to now, we made the big decision. And in the same meeting, we're trying to make all the small decisions that support the big decision without being able to go to the public and talk about the big decision and how that impacts the small decision. So yeah, statutory wait list would be great, I think, but we haven't really been able to take that out to, like, unless we were presuming what the vote would be on the cap, which I was not making that presumption, to me, I'm struggling with these because these aren't what we were engaging the public upon. Because this would have assumed any of the factors, one of which was not having a cap. So I'm just really struggling to know what this looks like without being able to properly engage on these factors. So thank you.
Okay, we have Councilor McLean and Mayor LaBarge.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with who we're gonna talk to in the public. We just talked to everybody in election, we did a survey, and now everybody talked to us or phoned us in the last few weeks about this topic again, but I'm not gonna go against bringing it back to committee of the whole. If that's what it takes to move this along. And I think we've consulted the public at least 2 or 3 different times. I think the public has made their 2 different sides have made their views known to council. And I think that we need to make a decision to move on, right? And at the end of the day, I will support going back to the committee of the whole and getting any clarification that we need there, and then to the future regular council.
Okay, Mayor LaBarge and Councilor Nelson.
Okay, I'm sort of thinking procedurally how I want to work through this, but, I mean, would it be helpful to know whether this is, I mean, my view of it is, I'd like to see it come back to regular. Can change things at regular anyhow, but man, we've had this thing over and over and over. And it's not to rush it through, and I don't think that should be the feeling, but at the end of the day, like, some of these things we're talking about here is how do we make that bylaw that seems to be working okay better? And things like having waiting lists and stuff just seem to make sense. And then we don't have to touch it for a long time. So I'm not thinking about rushing, but I mean, if it would make sense to table this and somebody put a motion forward to say, let's bring it to regular or to committee or whatever. But I do think somehow, some way, we need to move to concluding.
Councilor Nelson and then Cyril Nassar.
Yeah, and specific to this one, I think the same people that want the cap would also not want there to be a wait list. I think the feeling is, once we have a cap, council then will be working, and there's more demand than there is supply. Their expectation is gonna be that council does what you were talking about earlier, which is now look at those neighborhoods and say, hey, let's not have too many neighborhood. Let's make sure the price point is right. And if we have a waiting list, we're then committing to all of those people that nothing is going to change while they're on that waiting list. If it's first come, first served, and and it pops up and there's another one, whether it's a lottery system or something different, but it also means that we can't change this much in the future other than just increasing the cap. Because if you're on the waiting list and we say, hey, it's only gonna be RS1s and not RS3s, well, if you're RS3 on the waiting list, the expectation is that you're on that waiting list and nothing is going to change to bump you from that waiting list. So I don't think the waiting list is the right thing. I think a lottery is the best thing based on what I know right now, because a lottery at least gives council the flexibility to make changes, because as soon as somebody's in line, if you boot them out of the line, it's not fair to anybody. So it basically forces us to not improve this bylaw as long as there's anybody waiting in line.
Mayor Opanasik?
Thank you. Through the committee, the only thing I was gonna say is, you know, what format we see it for the next meeting. My recommendation is that we go through all of the changes that we want and just make a motion on the changes. And then at the very end, we can talk about, you know, given the scope of the changes, do we want to see this at committee or council?
Marge?
That's a pretty good idea. I never thought of that actually, but, so I do think that might change my mind a little bit, so I just, never really thought about it that way. I just thought a good orderly rule, so the word lottery was used. I mean, is that something we can do?
Yeah, through the chair. No reason we couldn't do that.
Council Nelson?
Yeah, and if I can speak to it, like, I wanna be able to accomplish some of the things that we're talking about and some of the concerns that we have, and I don't think we can accomplish those if we have a standard waiting list. But again, I like, the lottery thing, the only reason I think of it is because that's how my neighborhood was built, it was a land lottery. But, I think there might be other better ideas and different ideas if we, if we actually have some time to think about it and now say, hey, we're doing this cap, we think we're gonna be up against the cap. What do you think is the most fair way of looking at how we manage that, or we divvy things out? So that's where I'm really struggling with, like, I think I'll vote no, but it's not because I'm against it, it's just because I don't think it's the best, but I don't know what the best is. So, thank you.
Council McLean?
No.
Okay, so we have motion. That committee seek consensus to have an inclusion of statutory wait list in the short-term rental bylaw number 1162. Please vote.
What if I want to make a comment?
Oh, sorry.
I don't.
Council Charles, sorry, sorry.
I put it on.
I'm sorry.
By mistake, but
Well, I said please vote. Oh, I
no,
forgot.
I voted long before that.
Okay, so this was passed with Mayor LaBarge, Council McLean and myself voting for, Council Nelson and Council Charlton voting against. Thanks, everyone, for those discussions, Council McLean.
So now can I seek consensus, move that this be brought to as soon as possible to regular council? Soon as administration has worked that.
Date?
That June second,
So, yeah, meeting after next,
June second.
June second? June second.
Is there any rush? Again, we missed this season.
I didn't put the date out.
Yeah.
As soon as administration was ready.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I'll be speaking or voting against this. We're making sweeping changes to the bylaw with the entire concept of short-term rentals, where there's a lot happening, and I understand bylaws have multiple readings, but I just don't know that I'm confident enough in the work that we've done that. And tried to give the right direction to admin as well as we can, that, to me, this type of thing is better to come back to. Committee of the whole, and it might actually be faster than. Going to regular, doing a first reading, then trying to edit, then the bylaw getting voted down, then you're, like, I think this is one that if we walk before we run, we might get to the destination. If we just start sprinting towards, first, second, and third readings, I wonder if we might find ourselves in a dead at some point. Thank you.
Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I disagree. I think it's, time to move on. I think these changes that we've made, I don't think they're sweeping. I think they've been talked about for years, over, number of campaigns and number of surveys and a number of studies. I think that everybody's well educated, the public's well educated, the community's well educated, the voters are well educated on this topic. And I think now we are. And I think that we're able to make that decision in a regular council meeting and move on.
Well, I'll speak in favor of it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't a new bylaw. It's cranking down the screws on one that's been around for a long time, so. I'm comfortable with it going to be that working with our son.
Okay, the motion is that committee seek consensus to bring the short-term rental bylaw 1162 to a future regular council meeting. Did we want to say June 2nd on here then?
I just, soon as administration is ready. Prepare.
Okay, how do we like to have that worded?
If the motion is put forward and the councilor's happy, that's fine, but our target will be for June 2nd.
Okay. All right, so that is the motion then. Yeah. Okay, please vote. Okay. That was passed with Mayor LaBarge, Councillor McLean, myself, Councillor Charlton voting for, and Councillor Nelson voting against. Oh, Mayor LaBarge?
Well, I think we should finish, because we did the easy changes. Like, we haven't talked about transferability and I think we've decided this is coming to regular. I think it's unfair to say to, administration now, you figure out how to deal with the guy you sell this house. So, I think the recommendation's there, so, I am going to seek consensus that there be transferability of license by operator of property ownership. If I could speak to it. Is, I said it earlier and I just sort of reiterate again, by virtue of doing this, turn that home into an investment property. And so I'm not quite sure why, there's the, it's business, there's a premium, property's worth more because there's license there. So I think it should be treated as an investment property and that the license would transfer at the option, property owner transfer the property. So,
Councillor Nelson, then myself.
Just looking for clarification, it is that the short-term business license stays with that property and continues the next owner,
the
but
option of the,
right, but an owner of a business license can't take it to a different.
correct. Side and property.
Maybe. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't support it. I think that once the home is sold, it is sold as just a regular home for anyone in the town to purchase it without a license. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, well, the only problem with what you're saying, Councillor Dunn, is then we would have a cap that'd be going down, right? And we're gonna keep a cap at 61. And, or 70, sorry. Wishful thinking.
Remember the statutory waiting list.
So, yeah, that's the only problem, we're, I'd support it if we're willing to cap go down and we take one off the cap off 70 every time someone sold a property, that would be awesome, but I don't wanna go there today.
Council Nelson?
I think there's a couple pieces, so if it goes back into the pool, there's another license that's available to get to that 70. My big concern with it being able to be transferred, if we want to very quickly get to 70 and have unnatural growth from the 54 that's stabilized is by doing this, it will be monetized, and to me, if we're doing a transferable business license, there should be a very different fee associated with it. The moment you can show that you have a revenue generating property, and it's guaranteed to be in perpetuity, that's probably worth $20, $30, $40,000. And I don't think that should come for free, and it will basically mean that property is always going to be a short-term rental, and there's no opportunity for the market to kind of come in there. So to me, if we're going to increase somebody's assets by maybe 10% on a property, I don't have any of that data, but by a significant amount, then to me the community should get something out of it. It's kind of like if we say, hey, we're gonna subsidize this house by $50,000 to have affordable housing, and then the first owner sells it and just gets $50,000 from because they were subsidized, and that's ultimately what we're doing. So I think it either has to be non-transferable, or we have to come up with a special transferable license that annually is significantly more than a non-transferable, so that we're not just, we're talking about these out-of-towners and these businesses, and we're doing it like, if the intent is that they're not making undue profits without I don't think the transferable thing is it just doesn't feel in line with what we're trying to accomplish with this bylaws. Thank you.
And I'll just put myself in here. I go back to, we want to have these homes available for Hinton residents, whether it's a young family, someone coming into town, and having that $50,000 extra premium on that home, like, it defeats the purpose, and we want these homes available for Hinton residents. I know, and judging by the list of where all these homes are, a lot of them are, like, I think it was 29 or whatever, are whatever, 400 to 500 price range, and now all of a sudden it could be 450,000. I don't think that's a way to go. Mayor LaBarge?
Nelson keeps doing this today. That's a good idea. I never really thought about it like that, and you're right. I mean, my view is to try and figure out how to hold that housing stock in those neighborhoods at a level where we can get some normal rotation in the market. So I'll be speaking not in favor of my motion. I think I didn't.
You can't speak against it, you can only vote against it.
Okay, well, I'm voting against it. How's that?
Okay.
So for clarification,
Council.
Motion's there.
Councilor McLean.
yeah, so clarification, we defeat this. Does the transferable one, then we'd have to make a motion that it be transferable
Or not,
or not transferable, sorry.
however we wanna deal with it.
Okay, so the motion is that committee seek consensus that there be transferability of licenses by property ownership. Oh. So that was defeated. All right, any other comments? All right,
So
okay, Councilor McLean.
to that point, in number 3, I'd like to see the census be no transferable of license by operator or property owner.
against that one too.
Probably.
I'm confused. Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I think if I can speak to it, I think I'm in favor of this. I'm curious to see what kind of comes out of it. But the concept with this is that it makes it a lot harder to have a forever short-term rental. And it's more likely to keep that house a little bit more family oriented, which I think is what I like about short-term rentals. It would likely mean that somebody isn't going to turn their place into just as small a bedrooms, you get as many as you can, pack them in there, although we have the bylaw restricts number of people, but it means that home is likely going to be kept as a family home, not as a purpose-built short-term rental, because you're not guaranteed to be able to sell it as that. And if you buy it as that, if you buy it as a family home and you want to turn it into, do a lot of renovations, then you're always going to be thinking, this is going to have to be sold to the regular market first, unless there's an opportunity for the person who's buying it to then apply first come, first serve to have it be that. So to me, it should keep things more as a neighborhood feel than it would if it was transferable. So I think it's the lesser of the evils when we're talking about the caps and all those things. So thank you.
Pretty supporting it.
Sure. If we vote now, yes, if you give me 30 seconds,
Okay,
that's the challenge.
anything else? Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion that committee seek consensus, no transferability of licenses by operator or property ownership. Please vote. Okay. That was passed unanimously. Anybody else? Okay, Mayor Bird.
I'd like to see consensus, to cap exemptions. No. Cap exemptions.
Sorry, Drew, I think we have to read the first part of the motion in conjunction with this one, because this one is saying that we want to make changes that include cap exemptions for newly built residential units.
So you can build new places to have them be SDRs.
Correct. I think if you just take it all by itself, that doesn't make sense, because
That's-
what we're saying is if you go and build a brand new unit and the cap is, the cap is 70 and you want to build number 71, you could do that and you can operate a short-term rental. Is essentially what we're saying.
Okay, and that's the intent of my motion, that's what I'd like to get to. And if I can speak to it, is we got 60 acres west of town, like we've got land here that we can build things on. And if there's a developer that's gonna come in and build something that wasn't gonna be otherwise built, in my view, it's marginal and it's gonna get things moving. And some of this discussion is to figure out how to do that. And if that is somebody coming in to build a purpose build that they wouldn't otherwise do it, then I think I think there's an advantage then you have that happen.
Yeah, so clarification, I build a brand new house. I can short-term rental, but if I go to sell it, then the license not transferred.
Through the chair. Yes, I mean, there's gonna be some nuances of how we make that work. We just wanted to know, do we think that if somebody wants to come in and build build a new home for short-term rental to be purpose-built, should we allow that if we're at the cap? I don't think it'll matter, but we'll have to make those decisions, but as of right now, that's how I would see it working. If I wanna go build a home, operate a short-term rental, but when I go to sell it, it would be moving into the general pool.
Hey, Councilor Nelson.
So is that, oh wait, I don't see a motion. I've talked about it, but is that motion made or?
Yes.
Okay. So then I've got a few different questions. So right now we're talking about all sorts of building around the community, whether it's Bhutan lands, whether that's infill properties. My curiosity, so we allow developer, encourage, enable, like we actively say we want a developer to come here and build on Bhutan. And they do short-term rentals. According to this motion.
Councilor McLean.
He's got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, through the chair. Yeah. Bhutan might not be the example I'd use because we control the land and what gets built on it. But, you know, if there's an empty parcel, somebody comes in and says, I want to build a residential home, it's a permitted use, and I want it for a short-term rental, they can do that and they can use it for that purpose. Regardless of whether we've hit the cap or not.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, it's something similar, if someone wants to go in and has a parcel of land, an acre, and he could build 10 homes on it. Then he get short-term rental them all.
And through the chair, just, you know, just so committee's aware, but we do have somebody inquiring about this as well. After this report went out, actually, but it fits within it, but I believe that they want to build a home, they want to use it as a short-term rental. I believe their intent is that they may use the top or bottom, maybe a basement suite, and use one of them for a long term as well. But, you know, again, just to provide that outlet for newly built units.
Just a comment, I don't know, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of us building new places because we have low housing, but yet we're going to allow short-term rentals to go in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, to get this right, I believe we would be better served to do it as a zoning, so that if it's a new development area, it has a zoning that kind of like Canmore does, they have a zone that says, hey, this community is being built, and it is being built with full knowledge of everybody that's here, that it is a short-term rental neighborhood. We have a handful of partially built neighborhoods, and so you could take Capricot, you take the up by the golf course, you could take everything on Trestle and make every single one of those houses short-term rentals, because they would all be exempt because they're new builds, and you would have 50% of Trestle being short-term rentals. And I just don't think it fits the intent. So I agree, if we build an entire new community on 60 acres of somewhere, and everybody goes in eyes wide open that this is going to be a lot of short-term rentals, or that's a permitted zoned use for it, I would support that. But if you go to somebody on Trestle right now and say, hey, we listened to you, we're putting a cap on short-term rentals, except anybody that builds on all these empty lots that are now probably worth more because they're the only place you can build short-term rentals. I think I don't think I think it's misaligned with what the general effort of this conversation has been. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I think like Mayor Labarge said, I think Councilor Nelson is in my mind here, that we make motions and then listen to his arguments. I think it does defeat the purpose.
Councilor Charlton.
I do like the wording of zoning. In the sense that if it is a new development area and people do have the opportunity to come in with their eyes wide open and know that this development may include some or all or whatever, could potentially make sense and still allow for attraction of development. So I don't know what administration would need to be able to, because we don't really know the parcel of land.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, my recommendation is, instead of trying to manage that through, which would probably be the land use bylaw, I would just say that these are at the discretion of council. So if they come in and says, you know, Town of Hinton Planning Department, I'd like to build a new unit and it's going to be located here. Would you allow me to do that? Because there's so many nuances with these decisions, it's going to be really, really difficult to objectively regulate sitting here now. If council's worried about the nuances of the development, then that's probably the easiest way to go about it.
Yeah, Marilyn.
Well, it seems to me that we're arguing the exact opposite of the last argument. So then if you have a new area, then there's a potential premium value in your land because you're gonna have short-term rentals on it. I mean, my view of it is, if it's marginal, that thing wasn't gonna be, we don't have a shortage of land. And so if the rest of Trestle got built out and we started to collect property tax on Trestle, or we started to fill in some, again, my view isn't to stop short-term rentals because I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'd love to see visitors come to Hinton because of it. But my view is, how do we protect the vulnerable neighborhoods? And the last argument, in my mind, worked because, yeah, let's not tie up that house forever. That makes sense, but the level playing field means if we got vacant land, let's build some stuff on it. And I don't wanna get into a regulatory reality where we're getting a new house application every few weeks to come in front of council. And I think that's a terrible idea, but that's in my humble opinion. So, I mean, I think this is fair from a landowner's perspective.
Any other comments, questions? I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with this and I'm in favor of this. I just don't think it's aligned with the, like, we're going in a certain direction trying to accomplish, we want neighborhood certainty and we want, and then we're taking these weird pathways out. And my concern is, when you look at this entire bylaw, I feel like it's gonna feel quite piecemeal because it's not. And I think that's the challenge. We don't really know what we're trying to accomplish as like that top of the hierarchy. We're kind of trying to form all the things at the bottom. So I'm voting, I spoke against it because it's not consistent with what we're trying to do. I'm voting in favor of it.
Perfect.
But I don't think it's, I think it's incongruous with everything else that we're trying to do tonight. So I worry that it's the bigger picture of this starts to make less sense when we're restricting and encouraging at the same time. So thank you.
Yes.
To Councillor Nelson's comments about the whole piecemeal, I think a lot of bylaws are like that because each time a new council comes in, there's some issues with some bylaws, some parts of them that they put their own spin on, right? And this bylaw has been around for quite a while. We're trying to enhance it and move it forward. So yeah, it may look that way from the outside, but I think the changes we're making are worthwhile.
Yes, Theo has an answer.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll provide a little bit of context of why we recommended that one change, but you know, when we looked at this, we tried to find a balance between, because I'll back up, regulating short-term rentals and lowering the cap, and if we hit it, we are affecting the supply of housing in Hinton. Further regulations is going to, you know, to what degree, I don't know, it depends on the demand, but it is going to somewhat lower the demand and therefore the prices of homes in Hinton. Council's strategic plan is that we want to encourage private sector development of residential homes. So we thought that this was not actually a regulatory, we're trying to provide an outlet for people that would encourage further development of residential units, which is part of council's strategic plan. So it was a recommendation that came from that piece of the strategic plan, not necessarily, you know, how do we best regulate short-term rentals? So just a little bit of context of where that came from.
Great, thank you. Okay, Councilor Nelson.
And then just another clarification piece, so a newly built residential unit. If you had a house and you built a garage with a suite on top, would that be considered a newly built residential unit, or are you saying it's a house?
Through the chair, that would be considered, well, I think it would be a residential unit, but that would be considered a principal residence. It wouldn't be a non-principal, because you can have under our principal residence, you can have granny, garden suites, secondary suites that would be compliant.
So currently a non-principal, so if someone owned a house and wanted to build a garage with a suite on top, they couldn't build that?
No,
A detached garage?
yeah, no, they can, but it would be considered a principal and wouldn't be subject to the cap anyways.
Cause it's a principal residence.
Because you live on site and you're just building a
So
secondary.
what I'm saying is you've got someone that owns a house.
Yeah.
I live in Edmonton, I own a house in Hinton, and I'm building a garage with a suite on top.
Oh, but it's already a non-principal.
Mhm.
And whether that is that 2 license or 1, is that the question?
But is it considered a newly built residential unit? If it is a carriage suite on a non-resident, like someone that's not a principal owner.
I would imagine that it would be, yeah. Again, those are some of the fine details that we'll have to, but my interpretation of it would be, this would be a new one that you'd get a license for. Unless the license applies to the whole property.
Yeah, so I think just speaking of that, we're talking about neighborhoods and infill, all these things, that is just another, I think it would be great, it improves density, but if the start of this conversation was about protecting the neighborhoods, people have a reasonable expectation of whatever, if you can start building suites on top of garages that are exempt from the cap. Again, it's just whether that fits in line with what council's looking for. I would love for more of those to be built. To me, it's stock that's serviced and should be cheaper than some other things, but again, it's just whether that's in line with the direction the council's trying to go with this file.
Ms. Walker, did you have any comment?
Oh, sorry, Vanessa, did you want to comment on that? Okay, one of the things through to the chair through committee with the external secondary suites, they are required as well to to tie into water and sewer, so they have to have their own meter as well. They're not tied in through the house. And we do consider them a unit itself. Yeah, dwelling unit.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion that committee seek consensus to include cap exemptions for newly built residential units in the short-term rental bylaw 1162. Please vote. Okay, carried unanimously. Any more comments before we move on?
Ready.
I'm afraid to ask. Seeing none. Thanks, everyone, that was good conversations. Council reports. Councilor Nelson.
I'm not in that zone yet. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Mayor LaMarche.
Well, I was, on the weekend, I went to the basketball tournament that the Canadian Filipino Hinton Association, I think they are, ran. What a phenomenal, citizen-led initiative. Like that is so I think there were nearly 100 participants, but, just really well run, well attended. It was a lot of fun. Now, my first duty, me and Mayor Williams, was judging the beauty contest, and I wanted to die, but anyhow, it was a well-run event, and I just like to thank them for doing that and say to citizens, get involved and get things done.
Councilor Charlton.
Not so much committee work to report, but just maybe a special thank you and shout out to West Fraser for the tour that they provided last week. I found it very, very informative. It was great to have the tour to see what the operations, but the start of the meeting prior to the tour was just having the opportunity to talk with some of the upper management and some of the hurdles that they're up against in, you know, trying to keep, I think it was called no cut zones, and there was a lot of acronyms that were going around, but just to see what some of their hurdles are with, you know, keeping an operation like that going, but yet also keeping community safety and all of those things firsthand. So yeah, thank you to West Fraser. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh, and they have a name change.
Yes.
The name change is Hinton Pulp.
No.
Hinton Lumber. Hinton Lumber.
And about 17 other
Yes,
words.
yes,
A division of West Fraser, I think.
yeah. Something.
Councilor McLean.
That's it. I also attended the West Fraser presentation, and back to my old stomping grounds, and I see some familiar faces. It was a great presentation, a great tour, and also I attended Indigenous tourism workshop.
Thank you. I have a few things. I'll be taking up some of Councilor Nelson's time. So.
Do you like some planning?
So, Mayor Bart and I cut the ribbon for the Beaver Boardwalk, which was really nice, and the boardwalk is fabulous, so the new parts is so nice. I attended the library board meeting, a couple things with the library. The library is a member of the Yellowhead Regional Library, and they are suggesting an increase in membership fees from $4.85 per capita to $5.60 per capita, which would be about a $7,300 increase in our 2027 budget, in their 2027 budget. And 2/3 of the councils will have to vote it through in order for it to be passed. So our library board will be bringing forward a presentation to council before the end of June. They have to have all their votes in by the end of July, so they want to have that come back in June. Also with Bill 28, the Municipal Affairs and Housing Statutes Amendment Act, is looking at amending the libraries act with the restricting access to explicit materials. This could have a huge impact for our library. There was a letter sent out from our library that would to the Premier, Minister, Deputy Minister, and Shadow Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the Director of Public Library Services, and our MLA and our Mayor. What the Coalition of Alberta Public Libraries is asking is for a pause with this passing of the Bill 28, so that they can actually involve libraries and boards, because they weren't consulted before this motion was put forward. I as well toured the Hinton Wood Products, my old stomping grounds as well. I want to make a comment that Clint Powell, who is the sawmill superintendent, wanted to extend his thoughts to the municipality about some of the work that they did, especially he pointed out Lorraine and Trent and Alex. And he wanted to say thank you for all the work that you did in working with them. And I attended the poverty simulation with Mayor as well. That was hosted by Health and Food Bank. Which was excellent. It was a very, very good presentation, I guess, and anyone who has an opportunity to attend in the future, I would encourage that. And Bernie Kreiner was there, who is a member of the president of the Hinton Food Bank. He wanted to extend a thanks to the town for the $15,000 that they provide, that we provide them every year. Thanks. That was it. From me. Okay. Report from Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to report. I did include my operating highlights under my section, but nothing else to report unless there's questions.
I have a quick one. And this goes back to what we had talked about earlier with short-term rentals and some of the complaints maybe that are made under the page 86 of 88, the community peace officer stats. They've got, say, as an example, 10 nuisance bylaw complaints, 10 traffic bylaw complaints. I wonder if we could ask them if they could separate short-term rental complaints and make it as a piece of this. And one way maybe they could do it is somehow if a a short-term rental is, the address is flagged for them when they're reporting. Just suggestion, comment.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I'll have a better idea of how accurate we track it, but we do track based on short-term rental complaints, because some people will report that it's a short-term rental, but again, my comment was just, I don't know how accurately we're doing that, and whether we're doing that for every call that we go out, whether you know, whether short-term is reflected to the officers on a consistent basis, but something that I can,
Okay,
but it sounds like that's an area of interest, and I'll pass that on.
okay, Councilor Nelson?
Just, well, I would say if we're pulling out short-term rentals, I think we also then need to make sure we know whether it's principal or non-principal, because I think we're talking about short-term rentals, if people hear a problem with short-term rental, they're associating that with non-principal short-term rentals, but that doesn't mean that it is, and if we're looking to collect more data on how we move forward with this, I think there are problems with principal short-term rentals as well. I just don't think they get spoken about or thought about as a principal short-term rental. I think they all go in the bucket of the absentee person that doesn't live here, doesn't care. So just so that it's not mixed up too much.
We should have a meeting and build a bureaucracy around it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I'll be there.
you could include home-based businesses too in there. Right? We have complaints with some of those as well.
We could really expand that.
Mhm.
Okay. Mayor Bard?
I was asked the other day and I wasn't sure, have we now got a second bylaw officer?
Are we able to announce it? We do have one coming soon. I will say we have one coming soon. Oh, it did, okay. Yeah, Adeline, who was the peace officer here prior, she's gonna be coming back. And so we're finally gonna have a full complement of peace officers, so we are very excited.
Excellent, thank you.
A full complement, is that 2 or 3?
2. We're going from 1 to 2, and it's a big deal.
Double.
We've doubled, yeah.
Okay, so. That's it for our agenda. I think I'm gonna need a motion to go into closed session, or do you have something?
No. We'll literally go and close the
Right.
meeting.
Okay,
With a 5-minute break, right?
thanks, everyone.
As well.
Oh. Thanks for council for.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thanks, Deb.